And it looks like we're live, so let me just double check everything here. Audio is looking good from the Yeti, and just looking around to check the mic gain. So I'm a minute early. It's always better to be early than late, right? So hey everyone, I already see a couple people popping on the channel. Thanks for stopping in this morning. I hope you enjoy this one. We're going to be talking about the Ricoh Theta Z1. This is not a new camera, but it's a camera that's been missing for quite a while. I actually got interested in it back in April and couldn't find it anywhere. But before we get into that, number one, I hope you had an awesome weekend. For those of you who are new to this channel, we do a lot of drone talk and imaging and some mobile technology. And drone talk is usually about autonomous drone flight, more often than not, and about building your small or medium-sized drone business as well. If you hear some noise in the background, it'll go away in a minute. I think Jody's getting some ice out of the ice maker. All right, so before we get into the Ricoh, and here it is in all its glory on a little stand, we'll actually take a closer look at it. I wanted to take you through, this weekend I got to do another flight for one of my clients. This has been a regular client since January. They're building out this really cool ranch area, and the past couple of months have been tough for a lot of folks. Number one, doing things in construction with the pandemic going on has been problematic. Things aren't getting delivered on time. People aren't available to come out to locations. So we had a couple of months where we haven't flown this at all since May, actually. And this is not a finished video. I actually got to go back and finish my color grading. I was fighting with a couple of things on Saturday. It is monsoon season. We haven't seen much of it where we are, but other locations have had some good rain. When I drove over to the client location about an hour away, I looked off into the distance, saw what the cloud cover was doing on the satellite map, and I crossed over a mountain, and I got there, and we had some heavy storm clouds, and then we had some blue skies, and then some heavy storm clouds, which was a lot of fun for white balance. So let's go ahead and just play this. So once again, this is not a completed video or anything, but this is the rough draft of it. So you're getting a look. The building on the right, the new barn area and all those things over there, this is all completely new. If you've seen my original video from January for the first flight for them, this was all tree covered in, but now this is going to become quite the horse ranch. So had some fun, and you'll notice as we're flying through this that the trees are blowing really good. Yes, I sped this up a little bit, but I had a couple of warnings from the drone. I actually landed the drone a couple of times because I'd have a 15-minute period where I said, I'm not flying the drone right now. So we went back and forth between it's going to storm really hard and, oh, hey, it's going to be a beautiful blue sky day. There you can see those trees blowing around again, so that was a little odd. And all right, I'm just taking a look over to make sure I don't miss any chats. And if there are any issues with the audio, please let me know as we're going on. I don't think Corey's here yet, but he always keeps me honest on the audio. So new fencing's going around this as well. So overall, this has been a really interesting and large project. We've been working on a 40-acre location, and there has been a lot that's changed. I was actually blown away pulling into the job site at how much has changed over the past few months and how much has changed since we started this. So this is an example of one of our construction progression services that we offer to clients. Might be something that you should look into as well for offering to your own clients. We're getting sought out more often, which is great. The summer hadn't been so good. I think it was a big part the pandemic and people not knowing where they're at right now. And also, I always seem to have a slowdown in July and August for my primary business as well. So, kind of normal, and we're getting back onto schedule with several of our regular clients. We also did a little flight down the driveway just for fun. And once again, wind blowing around. You can see that on the tree there. So there's the new barn building. So only a few months ago, it was just a concrete slab, and we did actually fly that as well. So there you go. Yeah, and if the color's off, let me know either in the chat or down in the comments as well, because I'd really like to know. I'm just making sure that the stream is looking, the stream's looking like it's doing okay. And there we go, orbiting around this. So we're just about wrapped up with that, and then we're going to talk about the Ricoh. But I just thought you'd like to see part of what I did for my weekend. Sunday, yesterday, I didn't do any flying because 90% chance of rain. There were opportunities to go fly yesterday. And as you can see, my color grading is really bad here, so I need to go back and fix that up. But yeah, blue skies, heavy clouds, strong winds, and a couple of downpours. When I drove back into Prescott, driving over Granite Mountain, the highway there was just completely and totally soaked. Good morning. How are you doing this morning? Thanks for dropping a note, and welcome to the channel. So we're just going through a flight that I completed this weekend for one of my clients, and then we're going to start talking about that Ricoh Theta Z1. So alrighty, there we go. That's a wrap on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And like I said at the start of this, I'm going to pull this one up here. Like I said at the start of this, I've been interested in the Theta Z1 since April. I couldn't find one anywhere. Good morning, Chase. How are you doing? Color looks good. Okay, thanks. I still have some color grading to do with that because that went a little too blue. Jody was thinking it was leaning kind of to the purple side. So anyways, we've been getting into doing 360 virtual tours. We used the drone for some of that 360 virtual tour work. I also picked up a 1X, so the Insta360 1X. I picked up one of those last year, and I've used it for a couple of small things, and it's a nice little camera. It does a good job, but it doesn't do a great job. And if you're thinking about doing, let's say, interior work for real estate, the 1X isn't up to it. When you load still images into most any of these cloud services, so we use Kula, but there's also Cloud Pano and Theosys. There's a bunch. When you load images from the 1X in, you get a lot of grainy stuff going on. And even when you're doing the inbuilt HDR, you get some grainy stuff. Let's see, Corey, good morning. Saturday, I filmed local downtown Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, I know Jacksonville. I used to live in Florida when I was a kid. And yeah, winds, same here this weekend, Corey. So anyways, the 1X isn't quite what you want for doing real estate interiors. So we started really going on a huge learning curve for ourselves. We picked up a Nodal Ninja bracket for my 7D. So I've had the 7D forever. So there was no investment there, just in the bracket for doing 360s. And what we've been finding over the past couple months is if you want some really high-end 360 tours, going the DSLR way is a great way to go. There's more setup time. There's a little more behind the editing as well. And I've learned a ton about this in multiple locations, some of the 360 channels here on YouTube. So props to everybody who shares their information on YouTube as well. It's appreciated. So like I said, we started doing more with the 7D, but I got a notification recently that, hey, I could finally get the Theta Z1. So we actually debated it for a little bit. I was kind of, I said, I've only got so much in the budget for new equipment every year. And the Theta Z1 pushed me over the edge. So we're not buying anything else new here. So we've got the Nodal Ninja, a couple other small things this year for, equipment for the business. And you're always going to be reinvesting in your small business. Don't think for a minute that something's not going to break down and you need to replace it. So that happens. So the Z1, that was in the budget, but that's the end of the budget for 2020. So, we were debating it a little bit, and we finally made the purchase, and it came in last week, just a little over a week ago. And playing with it on my first day on Sunday, I got to say I wasn't super impressed, but I was just starting into it. So, whenever we start learning new tech, we like to race ahead a little. We like to, skip reading the manuals, which I didn't do. I read the manual. And there wasn't much information in the manual. 12 little pages on this thick little manual with lots of foreign languages so that everybody can read it, because this is being sold everywhere. But there's only 12 tiny little pages with a tiny little manual. So not a lot to go on. So I spent some more time on YouTube this week and some time experimenting for myself. So if you're trying to do a quick in and out virtual tour, 360 tour for real estate in a building, the Ricoh's basic modes. They've got some basic shooting modes and some higher end modes. One of the modes the Ricoh offers is this inbuilt HDR that generates a JPEG for you that's already seamed and everything. It's good to go. You can just upload it. And I will say that those came out okay. I wasn't super enthused about them, but they were all right. Let me pull up Kula here. So I use Kula for my 360s. And what I'm doing, there we go. I made a series of images for myself at the start of the week. So this is a no-brainer shot here. So I had the Ricoh in its HDR mode, its native onboard HDR mode, where it's going to make a JPEG. And this is what it gave me in our blown out kitchen. So we've got all this light coming in here. And this looks pretty good to me. One of the things that I had as a complaint with the Insta360 One X was as you looked on these side edges, they were super pixelated. It was like there was so much noise being introduced, like, when you're doing a higher ISO photo or something. So the Insta360 did not do great on these dark areas either. And you can even see detail out of this window. So this was shot with the Ricoh, and I'm going to be putting the Ricoh on screen. So we're actually going to take a look at its user interface in a few. So just bear with me. I just wanted to show you, a couple of things that jumped out at me. So this was shot with the Ricoh, and the, let's see here. Where am I? There I am. All right. So let's untitle HDR. There we go. Let's look at the One X. Okay, same exact scene. I moved the light stand into the same location. I actually put down little tape marks all over in the kitchen and living room for where I wanted to shoot from. So this is the One X, and this is the One X in its HDR mode. So you can see right away, I got some detail out of the windows with the Ricoh. I did not get any detail out of the windows with the One X. Also, look at how pixelated this is over here. That is just screaming noise. That's like when I was first learning how to do Milky Way photography, bumping up the ISO and doing the longer exposures. And as you start learning that, sometimes you might find that you've got a lot of noise introduced in the image. So you need to work with your technique on that. But these edges, very, very pixelated, very, very noisy. When you're zoomed out a little, it's okay, it's tolerable, it's passable. But if you're doing this for a client, you want to give them something a little better. And like I said, we've got more detail out of this. So this isn't edited at all. I just took it right out of the camera just to see how well it performed. Those edge details, we're not getting all that noise. We've got so much more detail out that window. And let's move on to the next one. So this is another shot with the Ricoh. As you can see, during the afternoon, talk about blown out areas in the kitchen, right? So this is the Ricoh once again. And, it's all right, but it's not great. With some editing, maybe we could get some more detail out of those windows. But let's take a look at the next one. So this is the One X, and I just want you to look over here in the shadowed area. Talk about some noise. Super, super noisy in there. And much less noise. There's still pixelation noise. I can see it in there, but not on the level of the One X. So big differences. I'm just going to move over to one more. So this is the den room in the house. And yes, we're getting ready to be moving soon. So that's why there's nothing in it. Not heavy pixelation on these doors or anything, but then we're going to take a look at the One X again. And all that noise in there. Also, we've got warping on the edge here. You see this warping going on the door frame? Yeah, really weird. We had some major warping on this other side too in the next image. Oh, I didn't pop that one onto there. Never mind. I don't have that next image. But so you're getting the idea. The Ricoh definitely outperforms on its little out-of-the-box setup here. So its HDR does a nice job. I also did a bunch of test shots over at Pioneer Park the other day. I put up a video on YouTube on the Pioneer Park visit. So if you'd like to see some of those images, I think it's, the last video that I did here. So just take a look back on channel and you can see the Pioneer Park. We checked out an outdoor roller skating rink, a children's playscape. This is all a major park in Prescott, a bunch of baseball diamonds. So just to give a tour of the area. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize this one now. And now we're going to talk about, so, I was impressed with the HDR, but I wasn't totally amazed. I wasn't sitting around going, this is the best damn thing in the world. And that was day 1 and 2 of using it. But then I started doing my reading and I started checking out everybody else's channels again to see what I could do right or what I could do wrong. And there's actually a lot of features for the Theta Z1. And before we pull that up, I'm just gonna grab the other screen here. One of the things I found interesting off the bat after doing my reading and watching some videos is the Theta Z1 can support external plugins. So people, developers, can actually run out and create plugins for your Z1 to do different things. So that's kind of interesting. And there was one plugin I was interested in particularly, and we're going to talk about that. I'm scrolling down. Partner plugins, the dual fisheye plugin. So if you want to get one of these Z1s for doing interior work, for doing real estate, you're probably going to end up grabbing this dual fisheye plugin like I did. So Ricoh has a bunch of plugins as well. So you got underside cover, so place your logo maybe down at the bottom if you've got your little stand showing up. Animation, auto framing, 360 hunting game. They got a bunch of things. Time shift shooting is an interesting one because what that does is it allows you to shoot one lens at a time. This has 2 lenses, a front and a back. And usually we have to run and hide to not be in our 360 photos, right? Because it's photographing in 360 degrees. So we duck down behind a couch or we hide behind a truck or whatever. Well, this time shift shooting sounds brilliant because it takes a shot from one side so you can stand and hide on the other side. Once it takes the shot, you can move around to the back side and it'll take the front shot. One thing that I have found though is that if I'm using one plugin, I can't use another plugin because there's a couple of things I want to do with that time shift shooting. I want to do some bracketing, and that other plugin I mentioned, the dual fisheye plugin, at least on my setup with iOS and the camera, I can only do one plugin at a time. So if I want to do this time shift shooting, I can't do another thing that I want to do. I could be wrong. Let me know down in the comments below. If you've got experience with the Theta Z1 and you can stack plugins, please let me know and I'll be learning something from you. So they have, several different plugins, and then they have these third-party plugins. So who are these third parties? Do we know them? Do we not know them? This is one thing that made me a little nervous about the Theta Z1. Is somebody screening these plugins before they go out into the wild? As I was setting up and I added this dual fisheye plugin, I was a little worried. I said, who's this person who's doing this? Are they a legit developer? And is Ricoh screening these? So I don't know the answer to that. And I'm not picking on it. I'm just saying, before we start downloading partner plugins and things, we should make sure where they come from and that they're safe and they're not going to, let's say, nuke our brandy new camera. So as you can see, there are a ton of plugins. I mean, this is a ridiculous amount of plugins for this. So I haven't even gone through and read them all, but we can go beyond the normal standard, what is the camera giving us mode. And with that in mind, what I'm going to do now, so I'm reaching over here and I've got this tiny little stand. Let's see. Yep, it's on screen. So I got this tiny little stand for, it's not for the Ricoh. I stole this from my Insta360, but we're just going to set this over here off to the side in a minute. And so this is the camera. There's not much to it. 2 lenses. It is definitely heavier and much more substantial feeling than the Insta360 One X. Over on the side, there's a series of tiny buttons, okay? These are annoyingly small. One feature I did not like. Where you have your power, you have your Wi-Fi setup, you have different modes and different functions. What I found with this is that I'm often switching over to those modes. And you don't have to use the smartphone app, so it's not required. So I just turn this on and we're waiting for it to come up, but while it's turning on, I also have to do something with my iPhone because we're going to take a look at this. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize while we're here. And I'm just getting the iPhone set up, so just bear with me. And the Ricoh has finally turned itself on. And now we're going to connect to the Ricoh. So the first thing you do after you unbox this is you're going to be setting up your wireless connection and your password to it. And it takes a few minutes. We're not going to cover that part because I've already got it set and ready to go. But we are going to take a look at the interface because I have to say, for me at least, that the UI on this is terrible. The user interface is not super appealing to me. Maybe that will change over time. All right, 2924. So we're just getting the screen mirroring up. So the screen mirroring today was a little extra work because the Theta Z1 has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And so if I'm trying to stream to the computer here, and my Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are both in use, now I've got to connect up the iPhone with a little anchor cable here. So I actually wasn't sure if I could screencast this to you or not. So I'm glad to say that I could. And I'm just checking over occasionally, making sure that I'm not missing anybody's chats here. By the way, so this is the 360 view in here, so you're seeing what I'm seeing on the screen. You can actually see the little line where the stitching is going to be. And you can see me waving over here. So you can, in fact, do 360 live streams with this thing. That's one of the features. I'm not interested in this camera for video at all. This is for still 360s. This is for client work. Maybe I'll play around with the video, but I've heard that the video is not the greatest, okay? So just being upfront about that. So here is the basic screen when we get in, and up on the top bar, we've got the little camera icon or the video camera icon. Over to the right of that, we've got a little cog. We're going to talk about that in a few, but first we're going to look down. Remaining number, 2,477 JPEGs. This is set to JPEGs right now. The image size, 6720 by 3360 pixels. That's great. That's a very sizable image. Then we've got the screen where I am, and we can actually change the screen. So now we can look around in the 360 viewpoint, and there I am on screen and yapping away. And then we can also turn that screen off. I don't know if that's really going to save you any battery life or anything when it comes to your iPhone. I'm just not sure. By the way, I'm looking over at the camera right now, and the camera is telling me, and there it goes on screen too, 97%. One of the things you should know about the Theta Z1 right off the bat, this thing is a battery monster. It eats batteries like you wouldn't believe. We did a short test earlier in the week. We got below 20 photos, I think, down at Granite Creek Park, and battery was below 50%. So it really blasts through the batteries. So when you're going into a location, you need to have in your head what you're shooting, where you're shooting, and move yourself through quickly because this is a battery hog. Now you can hook up an external battery pack to it and plug it in. And so that's a positive, and we're probably going to be doing that. I've got an Anker battery pack that I bring regularly in the field, so it might be that we're going to be bringing that along to either recharge it or keep it charged. One of the other things I should mention, it does charge pretty quickly, so there's that. But basically, I think if you were doing real estate with this and you were just going, running and gunning from site to site, I think you're going to get a house and a half, and then you've got to charge this thing. All right, so I've got that Theta screen turned off. We'll put that back on. Down below that, we have our EV, so 0, 0. We've got our white balance, so we can go in and change our white balance. Sunny day, rainy day, incandescent lighting, it's got it all. I'm going to go with the auto right now. And I should have tapped on the EV. So you can increase or decrease the exposure. So let's just slide that over. Look at that. I'm blowing the room out here. Yep. All right, let's bring that back down to 0. So you can make manual adjustments with this, which is awesome. And we're going to talk more about that afterward as well. So I'm going to tap that EV again so we're at 0. And then finally, we've got this option setting. So we've got a noise reduction one if you're shooting in darker locations where more noise might be interested. They've got a noise reduction setup. They have a DR compensation. Now I can't remember what DR stands for. I'll look it up after. Sorry about that. But I think it's compensating for some of the extremes. Then we've got our HDR rendering. This was the auto rendering I was talking about, and that's what you saw in the earlier experiment that I was showing you on Kula. So this is the HDR rendering where it's going to try to get as much detail for you as possible. It did a decent job in the kitchen, but it was also working with a really dark room. The living room is very dark. So you get this super dark room behind it. It can only do so much, and HDR can only do so much. But in well-lit places, maybe you got all the lights on, and it's very well lit in the rooms, you can make some quick 360 tours that aren't going to take you a ton of time. And then with some minor editing back at the office, it will be presentable for a lower end tour. So it's going to be a tour that you don't charge as much for. All right. Also under there, we have, let's tap one more. We have handheld HDR. So if we've got it on one of the little monopoles or something, I think it's just helping you to keep the shake out. Now we've got that video option back at the top. We're going to stay away from the video today because, you know, I've read and watched a lot of other folks on YouTube and other articles. And right now, the Theta Z1 is not meant to be a 360 video camera. Yes, it can do 360 video, but it's not as good at the 360 video as a lot of other cameras. So if you're in, you know, most of us who were on the waiting lists and things for this camera, we were on the list because we wanted to use this mostly for still 360s. So that's my belief at least. So we're sticking to the camera side. Now let's look back up at the top. So we haven't looked at every button, by the way. By the way, down in the right hand corner, we do have an auto. So I forgot to mention that. So you can do aperture priority, shutter priority, ISO priority, or full manual. That's awesome. So this is a lot of flexibility for doing those stills. And you'll find down the road that I actually am using some of those. So the next item that I want to show you is in the upper right hand corner. We have this little cog. So this is one of the things that I just haven't liked about the user interface, because not all of it was straightforward to me, because there's another whole set of settings. You got to go to a different screen for that other set of settings. So this particular one, when we're in the camera mode, upper right hand corner, that little cog right there, that is for our shooting settings. There is also another thing called camera settings. I got confused by it a couple times this week because I was like, which settings am I going to? So shooting method, we have normal shooting, interval composite, multi-bracket is going to be very interesting to you. And now a new feature, animation photo, that I haven't tried and I don't even know what it does. My primary goal was to get really great 360 imaging inside of buildings for realtors and for clients. So I wanted something that maybe is a little quicker than the DSLR method. If we're pressed for time, then we know that we've got a great camera that can actually make some really great interior 360s. And you're going to see it is totally possible. So the interval shooting, have it shoot every so many seconds. The interval composite, doing the same thing in compositing. Multi-bracket, this is where we can set up for manual HDR, so, or, you know, blending layers together in Photoshop, whichever way you want to do it. We'll talk about the way that I'm doing it in a little bit. But so multi-bracket is probably going to be really interesting to you. Like I said, that automatic HDR setup, it's pretty cool and it does a decent job. But if you want to make something awesome, we're gonna see that in just a bit. So there we go. I'm gonna go with normal shooting for the moment. We'll look at the bracketed after we run through this list. Display after shooting, so we could have it assembled on there. But we can, you know, we see our setup if we're using an iPhone or an Android. We can see on the video screen of our phones, you know, what are we getting. So I don't have it display after shooting because for all I know, it's going to eat my batteries even more. Self-timer, so you can have it, you know, do timing. Camera visibility reduction, so that you're not getting the camera in your shots. My settings, you can make your own custom settings. So you can set something up and then register it to the camera to be reused later. Big time savings on job sites. File format. So this is one thing I want to point out to you because all these people online keep saying, it can do JPEG, it can do DNG, it can do JPEG and DNG together, it can do DNG by itself. I have not found a way to have it do DNG by itself. We can do JPEG, or we can do raw DNG and JPEG. So that's what I've been doing, is raw DNG and JPEG. I'd like to just be able to set it to raw DNG. I don't want two separate files, but that's just me. Image size, and so I can't remember the CT settings, the label for that, but not something we're worried about right now. I'll try to follow up and put a comment in the show notes below afterward. If Jody was sitting here, she'd be able to tell me, oh yeah, that's what that was. So we've got our image size, and I would not mess with the image size. A lot of these hosting platforms for your 360 virtual tours aren't going after you based on how much storage you're using. So let's go ahead and get the largest size we can and work with it from there. So below that, ISO sensitivity upper limit. Remember, more ISO introduces noise. We don't want to have super noisy images. It's going to turn people off from the tours we're doing. So that's pretty high ISO, but you can also, in the manual settings for bracketing, you can tell it the ISO that you want it at. So I've been shooting at a low ISO. Camera shutter volume, that's the noise that the camera makes to let you know when it's done so you can stop hiding behind that couch. Let's see here. Number of possible shots, that's number of possible JPEGs. All right, let's go up here, and instead of JPEG, let's look at RAW and DNG. And now let's look down there again, 357 photos. Now on the little screen, on this little Theta Z1 screen, it actually tells me how many shots I have as well. So that little LCD area tells me a couple of things. It's also telling me that my battery is at 91% right now. So let's go ahead and put that back to JPEG. We're going to come back into here because we're going to do something with the shooting method in a bit. But before we do, here we go. We're back at that main screen again. So we could just start shooting. But what I want to do, lower left-hand corner, you can see that there was another button down in the lower left-hand corner. So the camera images, this is where we can go see what's stored on the camera. Now, if you don't know this already, this camera doesn't use an SD card or anything. It's got built-in memory, and that's it. So when you're transferring things, you want to make sure that you clear the camera off after you're done with a shoot. So you will be transferring from the camera to your image library on your phone. Or you could hook the camera directly up to your computer, and then you can import directly to your computer from the camera. So we've got a couple ways to do it. And let's make sure not transferred. Yeah, I don't have anything in here. But that's not really the real reason why I came here. Number one, let's just go hit that up on the top bar where it says cam images. We have another little cog. And transfer method of copy, or it will also do move. So I just use copy for it. And then the video zenith correction to fix that, the top area, because those things always get seamed together weird, but I haven't touched anything with that. But that's not the cog I'm interested in. So this is where I got a little confused as a novice. And like I said, there wasn't much in that little manual, the basics, but I didn't get the transitions between a couple of things. So down in the lower right-hand corner, there is a thing that says settings, and it's got a little N on it for some reason. Oh yeah, notifications. So you can get notifications from Ricoh on new things that are up and coming. I'll tap on that. So notification of the release of a new Ricoh Theta plugin on August 25th. Okay. So we've got a lot of these notifications from them. So if you're really bored, you can sit around and read them. All right, here we go. We've got a connection of Wi-Fi. So we're going to be connecting to our smartphones with Wi-Fi. And we can change the Wi-Fi password because the Wi-Fi password is like the serial number plus something else. It's not an easy one to remember, and it's hard to read. Okay, I'm not getting that old. Yeah, I know I'm wearing no-line bifocals. But the writing on the bottom of this thing for the serial number is something else. Really difficult to read, teeny print. So changing that Wi-Fi password afterward, is not a bad idea. The camera Bluetooth settings. So we can be connected through Bluetooth and through Wi-Fi, and we can be connected only through Bluetooth if we want. If we're connected only through Bluetooth, we don't get the video display of what we're shooting, okay? It leaves that off. So Bluetooth lets us control firing the camera, but not actually seeing what's happening on there. Then we've got our Wi-Fi frequency band, wireless LAN client mode, if you're actually connecting it to your LAN. You can update your firmware or check for firmware updates. GPS continuous transfer. You want to kill your batteries. It's a great way to do it. Camera settings. This is one of the things I wanted to show you because I was hunting for this, okay? Camera settings. We've got a sleep mode, so it's going to go to sleep in 5 minutes. It's going to auto power off in 2 hours. No, it's not. It's going to eat the battery away before that. By the way, we're at 89%. We haven't shot a single thing. Camera shutter volume high. Once again, I want to hear it because I'm hiding behind a couch or something. Transfer method right there is copy once again. Plugins. this is where we get our plugins. So we can actually add some of those plugins on that Ricoh website. So I'm going to tap this, and here we go, plugins to be used. So as you can see, I already downloaded the dual fisheye plugin, which is a third-party application, because I wanted to be able to do some big bracketed shots. And in this one, what's interesting, so you can do up to 9 brackets, and it kind of automatically sets it for you. There's a couple ways to do our bracketed shots. So one is this dual fisheye plugin, which I've been testing, and I'm pretty satisfied with it. But I figured out the native bracketing as well on this camera, so I've started using that more. But so when I go to these plugins, and I'm not going to do this to you right now, because when I start the plugin for the dual fisheye, I don't have control of my phone at all anymore. Apparently, they do have an external app for Android so that you can view it wireless, but not on iOS. So if I switch to that plugin, what happens is there's some extra information on this LED screen. And you don't need to be able to read this LED screen, but there's some extra information. Then I have to go and hit the mode button and hit the function button and then hit the Wi-Fi button and set up my stuff. But once I've connected to that particular plugin, at least on iOS, I lose my ability to control the camera. So at that point, I have to start using all those teeny little buttons and figure my way through setting up that dual fisheye. If I want it 3 brackets, 5 brackets, 7 brackets, 9 brackets, I have to start doing all that on that teeny little LCD screen. Now, maybe they'll come out with that other plugin part for iOS like they have for Android. I'm not sure. In the meantime, though, when I did hit that, when I did hit the dual fisheye plugin, and it says that it's starting the plugin up, when you hit a button, it brings you over to the Play Store so that you can buy that app for your Android. And I said, no, I don't need to do that right now. And I figured out my own method that I'm pretty happy with. So I'm just going to use that method for now. So when you activate these plugins, it could be that you can't access some of your other features because of the plugins. At least that's my experience with iOS. So I wanted to repeat that so you understand that. All right, let's arrow on back. Then we've got the camera version and camera license. We've got a user's guide. We've got frequently asked questions. There's my app version right there. So I've already checked with Ricoh that I'm on the right app. And then down in the lower left-hand corner, we've got device images and cam images once again. And there are none because I'd cleared it off. And I'm just checking the cam images now. Nothing there. Okay. So how do we get back from here? Because now we're this is where it was a little confusing. I'm like, do I go to that cog again? No, that's just my transfer settings. Do I go back down to that settings again? No, that's not doing it either. If you go back to the shooting menu, that's where you bounce back and forth. So the major things that we're interested in that are going to affect our experience when we're in the shooting menu is going to be that cog in the upper right-hand corner. And when we're down in our viewing menu, the item on the right-hand bottom corner, the settings button, is going to be the one we're interested in. So these are the 2 places that you're going to find most everything you need. So going back to the shooting menu now, because I would like to show you the next thing that we're going to talk about. So like I said in the beginning, I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was the greatest in the world. It did a better job than the Insta360 One X. But, you know, Monday and Tuesday, I was still thinking to myself, hey, I could send it back to Amazon and get a refund if I'm not thrilled with this thing. I'm one of those people who rarely returns anything. I always feel very self-conscious about it. But when you're investing $1,000 in a camera, if it doesn't do what you need it to do, you know, that's a lot of money that could be dedicated somewhere else. So, you know, as I continued progressing over the week, I said to myself, okay, we don't need to send this back at all. I'm digging this. So what got me to that I'm digging this moment? Well, it's up in the upper right corner. So there we go. We've got our shooting modes. And number 1, I'm going to go to that normal shooting mode, and we're going to multi-bracket. And we're going to talk about multi-bracket in a minute. So this is where the camera is not doing this for us. So unlike their onboard HDR generator in JPEG, this multi-bracket shooting method, we're doing the heavy lifting now. So this is where it gets exciting. and it does work a lot like a DSLR. I'm not going to do anything with the self timer because I'm going to dive behind a couch. Camera visibility reduction, once again, is on. Then we've got my settings. Now the CT settings is actually on here. And so I really do have to go back and reread what CT stands for. It was something very simple and basic. I'm going down to the file format because JPEGs, you can't really work with them too much, right? But RAW files, you can totally work with them. You can do some pretty heavy editing to get your final results that you want. So we've gone from the normal shooting mode to multi-bracket. And now we're going down to this file format of the raw DNG and the JPEG because we're after those DNGs. And by the way, battery's at 82%. So we can shoot 357 photos. You're never, ever going to get to do that in a home walkthrough because the battery is going to die way before that. So if you're doing multiple locations, that's one thing. But like I said, try to remember to offload this stuff as often as possible. So, you know, because it doesn't have a ton of storage. All right, so we have now switched to multi-bracket. And we have switched to the raw DNG, and I'm going to hit done here. And now the screen is going to look different. Whoa, that's not a view of the what the camera is putting out here. You don't see me in 360 or anything. What's going on? So this is where you can make multiple bracketed shots, multiple exposures of your choosing. So the plus symbol right down here, we could make a totally new one, but I actually want to keep this one. So this is where I could save those camera settings. Remember we saw the save camera settings? Yeah, I could save this setting. So we have my first shot at f5.6. I set it to ISO 80 because that was the lowest ISO it would allow me. And the shutter speed is at 1/80th of a second. I'm going to tap on this really quick, okay? Now we're going to see the view from the camera. So this shutter speed is a little too quick. You know, we're in kind of a dark room. You can see my two studio lights here. And so if we wanted to do a severe underexposure where we're exposing just for windows or something, so you could think of those lights as windows. So in here, is bracketed considered one shot? Is it each bracketed pick? It's each bracketed pick, Corey. So it's going to make 5 photos for me in this one. So the first one, I had it pretty underexposed because I just wanted to expose for those highlights. So I could change back to the default settings. I could delete it. I can go in here and change the aperture, change the shutter speed, change the ISO, change the white balance. So I can do this on the fly. So if I'm going from room to room and the exposure is going to be different between them, we can dial things in exactly where we want them. So I'm going to hit cancel on that. And so that was at ISO 80 at a shutter speed of 1/80th. Let's go down to 1/20th, much longer exposure. We should have some more detail in this room, right? We do. So we've still got those studio lights, but now we've also got the computer screen here, and you can barely see me, but it's definitely brought the exposure up. And so maybe we want some severely underexposed as we're building this. So let's go on to the next one. So this would not work very well outside, 1/10 of a second. So we've got blowing trees outside. So this would be terrible. This would be terrible settings for doing outdoors. So you're going to want to be thinking about outdoor settings and indoor settings and practicing with different room types or with different locations when you're outside. Let me just make sure. Okay. So there we go. It's 1/10 of a second. Everything else remains the same. I'm not touching the aperture. I'm not touching the ISO. I want that ISO low because I don't want to introduce a lot of noise. So we're going to cancel that. And now let's go on to the next one. Let's see if we're getting that exposure. It's coming up. So now we're at 5.6, 1/5 of a second. ISO 80, white balance 4200. And this was based on something I was doing. This probably is not the best white balance here. So you can go with some automatic white balance settings, or you can set the Kelvin. I would suggest setting the Kelvin. You've got this awesome screen here on your phone or your tablet that's showing you what's happening. So you're getting an idea of your white balance. Why not go ahead and fine tune it here? It's one less thing to edit and post-processing. All right, I hit cancel again, just making sure not missing any other chats. Let's go up to that most overexposed one. Now, this setup was for our kitchen room, okay? Wow, I look weird on that 360. So this is kind of a little blown out, wouldn't you say? Yeah, well, not fully blown out, but it's definitely a lot brighter, and that green screen sure is hot. So here, aperture 5.6, 1 second on that shutter speed, ISO of 80, and the white balance of 4200K again. So at this point, I'm going to cancel this. We're ready to go, but I could, you see the plus button right here, this little plus symbol? You can add more brackets if you want to, okay? So you're allowed, so we did 5 brackets here, but maybe you want to do 7, maybe you want to do 9. Maybe this is a really broad range. You got extreme shadows and maybe you got some extreme highlights. So you can go ahead and do more brackets if you want to. Now, like I was saying, so you know, you can export to your phone or your Android, but when it comes to the DNGs, you're going to end up connecting the Theta Z1 to your computer. Now, Ricoh has a couple of downloads for you. They've got their Stitcher for stitching images together. They've got their importer for Macintosh, and then they've got a basic application as well. You don't have to use all of their tools, and I'll explain about that in a few minutes. So right now, we could fire this one off. We could take these shots. I'm going to do that. So this is not great. We're not going to turn this into an HDR. Oh, by the way, here's the camera sound. Okay, I hope you heard that. So it's doing its shots. And so we're just waiting for it to finish out the shots, and it's telling me on screen I've got 2 remaining shots. We're at 5.6, so it keeps up with the shutter speed. It tells you everything that's going on, so it's very informative at least, so that's impressive as well. And we're just about done with these shots, and really I should have turned some more lights on or changed those brackets, but we're now done, so we could do another multi-bracket shoot. We could continue moving forward on the job that we're doing. So a 5 bracket is 10 pictures. That's right, Corey, because it's broken out, so it's going to be, you know, your DNGs, and then you also have these JPEGs. But as you're going to see right now, so we haven't transferred anything yet, but now the camera is doing something on the iPhone, isn't it? It's going a little slower. And if I go over to not transferred, so it's telling me, so here we go. So here's your answer, Corey. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 images. It has, so one of the things we cannot do is transfer the RAWs. So I cannot transfer the RAW onto my iPhone. I can transfer those JPEGs, and what I can do in the upper right hand corner, you'll see that we've got this little, you know, mountain symbol. I'm going to tap that really quick, and we can go ahead and select the non-RAW shots, and we could transfer them over, or as you see on the bottom, we could delete them as well. So we got a couple options. And, you know, I'm going to leave these on here for now. I'll get rid of them later. But if I transfer them, then they're transferred onto my phone, and from my phone, I can upload to the computer. But we're not transferring the RAWs here. We're going to need to connect the camera to the computer to get those RAWs off. All right, cancel. So there's our major thing right there. Let's go back to that shooting. So the bracket, this multi-bracket shooting mode is very, very similar to that dual fisheye plugin that's also available. That one does some automation behind it. It also allows for a final generated HDR if you want to, where it will pull the whole range into one final HDR DNG. I haven't personally had great results with that. Not saying that's not possible. I need to experiment some more. But I did find out a couple of things as I've been doing this experimentation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to exit out of the Theta Z1. We're going to take a look in Lightroom really quick. And wow, I'm probably going to go over time today. So if anyone needs me to cut it, just let me know. Otherwise, we'll keep going. But I'm going to go ahead and we're going to turn the Theta off. And all right, there it goes. It's powering off. And now I just need to stop the screen mirroring. Well, I'm glad this worked out and I was actually able to show you the screen through the whole thing. So, all right, let's go down to Lightroom, shall we? Oh, and also, I just want to show you. So Ricoh has several downloads that you're going to want to do. And I had a problem with one of them. So we have the regular Ricoh Theta. This is a regular connecting one. For Mac users, we got our own special transfer, Ricoh Theta for Mac. And then we also have the Ricoh Theta Stitcher for stitching things together. So we're interested in those raw DNGs. We're interested in making some higher quality interior 360s. What happens, so I'm just going to scroll over here. Let's scroll on down. And so you saw how I did that bracketing in the last part here with the camera and the iPhone. I did multiple brackets throughout the house. And what you're looking at here, if you're not a Lightroom user, I'm actually stacking some of my images. So I'm stacking them together to group them up so I don't have as many things to look at. So each of the shots that I did through our house here, I did 5 brackets. So overexposed to underexposed. And this is what one of the brackets looks like. So when we have it do that multi-bracket, whether it's the dual fisheye or whether it's the multi-bracket feature, this is what you're going to get back. So this is how the Ricoh actually sees the world. It's these 2 fisheye lenses. And so this is the underexposure from that multi-bracket. But let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to open this up. So now we've got photo 1 of 5 for the dual fisheye. Photo 2 of 5. See, there's where that bracket came in. And by the way, on Lightroom over on the right-hand side, you can see ISO 64. So this was done with the dual fisheye one. So this one's a little different than my multi-bracket, but same concept. And 1/125th of a second. If I arrow over again, ISO 64 again, 2.57 millimeter, f2.1, 1/60th of a second. Let's go over again. It's even brighter at 1/30th of a second. Everything else remains the same. And we go over one more time and even brighter than the last. All right. So what happens after you get all of those images? So there we go. Wrong one. Sorry about that. There we go. I lost track for a moment. It happens. So here we are with this particular group, and we did all 5 of those. We looked at them. What do we do now? Well, in Lightroom offers an HDR fusion type thing. It's not like some of the other HDR applications out there. Lightroom is a very soft touch when it comes to creating an HDR. So those 5 images that we just looked at, let's look at those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like we got a lot of detail in the shadowed areas, and that blending these together might yield something really nice. This is the final version. We're not there yet. I actually have to skip past that. So what I did in Lightroom is I selected those 5 photos. I did a right click on those 5 photos, and I said merge as an HDR. Here, let me hit the G key and we'll show you this. So there they are. 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to right click with those selected and look at this. Photo merge. We can do a photo merge for an HDR or a panorama or an HDR panorama. Don't think of this as 360 panoramas. It's not. It's more like the 180 panoramas. So we're not stitching those 360 together here. Okay. All right. So we would do the HDR, just the plain old HDR merge for those 5 brackets. And what comes out of it is this. Now, you can actually edit in here. You can edit on this before you stitch it together. But I was very impressed with this, so I'm just going to zoom right in. And we're just waiting for it to catch up. But the level of detail in here and the fact that we're actually getting some detail even through the windows, frosted windows, but I can see that there's definition out there. So this worked out very nicely. If we go into the develop mode, the Lightroom HDR, it actually moves some sliders around for you. So it's crazy. Oh, that's the TIFF version. My apologies. I need to scroll down and use a different example. See, my own experimentation comes back to bite me. So here we go. We'll take a look at this room. So once again, we've got another one. Actually, I'm going to open those brackets up. We've got another one with 5 brackets. So here's a severely underexposed. starting to bring it up. By the way, look at that severely underexposed. Look at the detail out the windows. Looking at the next door neighbors, waving at them. All right, next one's a little brighter and a little brighter and still a little and extremely bright. So had some major overexposure there. And the final thing that came out of it was this right here. Let's go look in that develop module really quick. So Lightroom went through some machinations of all of those brackets for us, and it came up with a nice balanced interior for me. Look at the detail through those windows. Look at the fact that I don't have a bunch of noise and pixelation here. Awesome. We haven't even sat down and tweaked this yet. This is just where we got, this is what we got from Lightroom's HDR. So it was really awesome. Now, we still need to stitch this thing together. So what you were looking at was that one right there. And let me take a look at the final thing. So the final item is stitched together. So front to the back of the room so that you can spin around the room. Look at the level of detail. So this thing is ready to get loaded up onto Kula or to Cloud Piano or anything else like that. And look at the detail out of that window. We're going to actually see these on Kula in a couple minutes. But so how did we get there? Well, normally what you're going to do, here is our bracket test, and we can go down to edit in, so we could edit it in Photoshop, or we can edit it in the Stitcher. So remember I said that there was a special Macintosh Stitcher from Ricoh? There is. And so you're going to want to download this too. It's free. Here's the problem. So here is the Ricoh Stitcher. I'm supposed to be able to plug it into Lightroom. This is according to everything I've read. I've watched people's videos. I, for the life of me, could not get the Ricoh Theta Stitcher as an export option. It was not working properly. Fortunately, I also have PT GUI. I've had PT GUI for years. So that's another Stitcher. And fortunately, the PT GUI Stitcher works perfectly fine. It's aces with this output. So right in here, if I go down to edit in and edit with PT GUI, it's going to stitch this for me. And what it's going to give me is this one. So I export from Lightroom to PT GUI. I should be able to export from Lightroom to the Theta Stitcher, but I'm having a problem with it. And so I'm just using another tool that I have. I'm not going to fight with this thing. And I'll go read around some more and I'll probably find my solution. But so the whole process here, number one, you go out and you shoot, you get your DNGs, you get them bracketed. Number two, you take all 5 of those brackets or 7 of those brackets, throw them in Lightroom and let Lightroom do the HDR blending for you. Now, I know a lot of other photographers, some of the folks that I follow along with, they do layers in Photoshop instead to get the final item to be stitched the way they want it. That works great, but I find it to be a little time consuming. And since Lightroom gives more realistic, less punchy versions of HDRs, I'm going to go ahead and use Lightroom because it's a super soft touch to begin with. So if you'd like to know more about this, because I see that we're going way, we're about to blow past. Usually I like to try to keep these to an hour maximum for the live streams. But if you'd like to know more about this or see the step-through process, let me know. I can do more videos on it. You can go over to Nathan Kuhl's site as well. He's got great info. And then, I can never remember that guy who's the 360 guy, but there's a lot of great info on a lot of this stuff. Not everyone has shown through the interface and things. That's what I was looking to do for you today. But, if you would like a slowed down version of this part, let me know. So our steps are make our DNGs, throw them into Lightroom, have them 3 brackets, 5 brackets, 7, whatever it is. Click the merge there. Up, right? Sorry, wrong panel. But let me see. So you import them, and then you're going to photo merge to HDR. When you photo merge to HDR, you're going to get You're going to get something like this. And then you're going to throw it into either Ricoh's Stitcher, if you can get it to work on your Lightroom, or something like PT GUI. There are a couple other Stitchers out there. The final result from your Stitcher is going to be this. And at this point, you might want to do a little additional editing, maybe a little noise reduction, maybe a little more color punch, whatever you want to do. We're back in Lightroom, and now we can use the Lightroom Develop module to help ourselves out. Now, see, I already did a minor develop. I dropped the highlights way down because I wanted as much detail out of those windows as possible. So that's an amazing level of detail without using an off-camera flash, okay? All right, just making sure nobody else, no other comments there. Well, thanks for hanging in with me, everybody. I know this was a longer one today, but I hope you enjoyed it and you got a good overview of what this thing can do. And we still haven't played with everything on it, but I just wanted to show you the process that I'm developing for doing these 360 tours interior. So using the Theta, I've popped up a couple of extra photos here just to share with you. And so we had all these bad ones that we were looking at before. That was the automatic HDR. But I'm going to arrow over here because I did some additional work beforehand. So this is the first one is using the dual fisheye. There we go. All right, so over on the right-hand side, I do have labels for these because I have turned these on to public for you. So if you go over to Kula, look up AZ Drone, you can take a closer look at these. And on the right-hand side, you're going to have a description of what's going on. So this was shot with the dual fisheye 1 HDR panorama. Now, I still have not experienced dual fisheye enough. So just being really honest with you. Matt, hey there. I'd be interested in seeing if these 360s from the Z1 can be loaded into Metashape or any photogrammetry. You know what, Matt? I did some experimentation with a DSLR last year where it did. Challenge accepted, man. I'll see what I can do this week while I'm testing this out. That is a really good question. Now remember, you know, these fisheye lenses, they're really distorting things like the 8mm that I have for the 7D. So it might be some wonky stuff, but it can't hurt to try, and especially every one of these things is geotagged. So, you know, this has the GPS going on with it the whole time. You know, you can find the images by location. So let's see if something can come together out of that. I do know that some of these new 3D virtual tour, you know, toy box type things, or doll houses they call them. There are some new tools out there that you shoot some 360 interiors and it actually creates that 3D interior. So I bet you it's a realistic thing. We'll have to try it. Sorry, anyways, this was the dual fisheye test. A little oversaturated on the cabinets to be sure, and they're usually not that bright. They're a little darker. They're more like this corner over here. They're dark corners. But, you know, this is me having a little fun testing this out. And so we're not having a lot of heavy pixelation or anything. Still, all right, this wall is pixelating, and that was something that I did not like with the dual fisheye. So let's move on to the next one. And so this one was also, this is the master bedroom that's already cleared out. Look at that detail out those windows. That's what I was talking about there. That is an awesome level of detail. We're not experiencing a ton of noise in here. This is showing off the room quite well. And then don't forget, before you're done, you can go through Lightroom and do some cleanup, some noise reduction if you need to, whatever you'd like to do. Let's go ahead and click on to the next one here. So this is, yeah, this one kind of got butchered a little bit. Once again, this is the dual fisheye plugin. And so let's get on to, that's dual fisheye again. All right. This is not the dual fisheye. This is the multi-bracket feature. So the built-in feature, that multi-bracket that I took you through, and we saw the exposures. So I was having a couple of weird issues with that dual fisheye one. So I jumped over to using the multi-bracket again, and I took the time to actually really familiarize myself with it. And I think most likely I'm going to be using the multi-bracket all the time on this. I'm looking back over at your comment, Matt, because now you got me thinking. I bet you we can use them. All right. Anyways, I'll stop being distracted, Rich. And so let's go on to the next multi-bracket one really quick. Once again, blown out room, and I was still doing some experimentation. So not perfect. Let's move on to the next one. All right, this is when we start getting into the good ones. And my apologies for bringing you through some of the bad ones. But I've got to clear out the collection now, and then we'll start showing the best of the best. So the one that we were working with there is this one. So not heavy pixelation. Once again, very impressive. Love the level of detail. Even the level of detail into this hallway, because let me tell you, that hallway looks really super dark to me. Just rotating around, there's all that great detail. Let's go into the master bath here. No camera showing up in the mirrors. Looking pretty good in here. We still have a little bit of detail out there, even with this frosted glass. I'm not getting that heavy pixelation like on the edges like I was with the Insta360 One X. So I've got to say, I'm pretty impressed with the multi-bracket solution right now. And, oh yeah, this one I actually pushed the ISO a little too much. But as you can see, we can really present a lot more detail out the window. So kind of like window pulls for standard photos. And you can also do window pulls with 360s with a DSLR, with a bracket, and with a portable strobe, where you can get great detail out the windows. So I'm going to say, you know, if you're trying to have a faster 360 process with better looking results, I'm going to say that the Z1 is definitely starting to impress me. Like I said, I was impatient for the first 2 days, aren't we all? And, you know, now once I sat down and took some time with it, I'm starting to see the features. This is a pretty robust camera. And if you can afford it, you know, if you've already got a DSLR and a bracket, or you've got a different 360 camera, you know, don't blow your budget for every single new thing. Don't do it. Since we're starting to do more tours, we've got a couple of tours already lined up for November and December with clients south of here. Since we're starting to do those new tours, it makes sense for me. If I didn't have people who wanted this service, I wouldn't, you know, why would I have gotten this? The drone, the Mavic 2 Pro, does a fantastic job for the outdoor 360s, whether they're really high up in the air, or maybe they're right down at house level and it's just like any other 360. So we've got the drone to do this, we've got the 7D to do this, and we've got the Ricoh to do this. I think we can make some higher end, let's call them mid-level 360s that have some pretty good quality. And when I'm thinking of high-level ones, I'm thinking of using the 7D or the 5D, using an off-camera flash, and then having to take multiple photos of each scene and stitching all that together. You want to talk about a lot of photos. If you're looking for a faster way where you can still produce some really nice results, some quality results that will be impressive to your clients and will be impressive to, you know, home buyers, I see the Ricoh Theta fitting in perfectly. So, wow, did I run over? My apologies once more, and I'm desperate for a sip of water here. I do apologize for that, everybody. Gotta remember I do have the mute button. So anyways, I'm going to wrap this one up. As always, I really appreciate all of you coming out, following along for a little bit. I hope this was useful information for you, and it gives you some ideas of other things to integrate with your business. For those of you who have hung through this whole thing, I'm taking you through my business building, and I'm hoping that I'm helping you with your business building. And I don't mind you getting in touch and having the private contacts. I appreciate hearing from all of you, and that to know that I'm helping you out with some of the stuff is really important to me. It's become a lot of fun doing these Monday live streams, and I'm glad that you're here and participating with them. So, all right, with that, I'm going to wrap this one up. I've got a great story that I'll do in another video, but I got a great story about one of those underbidding companies wanting me to do 12 properties where it was going to take me 2 days of driving time. So we'll save that for another one, and we can consider that kind of a venting session, because it's an interesting one. Until then, I'm wrapping up and hopping off, and I've got another conference call in a little bit, so I'm going to down some water. Have an awesome start to your week. As always, thanks for stopping in. Hope you had fun, and we'll see you again really soon.